everyone. Welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're going to explore Alan Watts and his ideas about happiness, see if we can, grasp some of his main ideas,
Hmm.
and how they might actually apply to our lives today, right?
Absolutely.
You never know. We might even leave with some tips we can actually put into practice.
I love that.
It-
Sounds like a plan.
So Alan Watts, you might already know him, especially if you've, spent some time with Eastern philosophy. But for those who don't, back in the 60s and 70s, he was this really important figure. He kind of bridged, these deep ideas from Zen Buddhism, Taoism, Hinduism, and connected them to how we in the West understand the world.
Hmm.
And it's amazing how relevant his thinking still feels today.
Absolutely. Watt's insights into human nature and, our constant search for happiness, they seem to kind of transcend time, offer a fresh perspective that challenges those assumptions that we often take for granted.
For sure. Okay, before we go too deep, let's just lay some groundwork here. Who is Alan Watts?
Well, he was born in England in 1915, but did most of his influential work in the U.S.
Okay.
And here's a little twist. He actually started his academic journey in, get this, Anglican theology.
Theology. Whoa, didn't see that coming.
Yeah, right. Bit of a curveball. But this background, in Western religious thought, it actually played a surprising role in his shift toward those Eastern philosophies.
Interesting.
He went on to become this leading interpreter of, Zen Buddhism, Taoism, Hinduism, and he made these really complex ideas accessible to a Western audience.
So it's kind of like he was a translator, He was taking those ancient teachings and putting them into a language that made sense to people.
Precisely, yeah. And he was, incredibly prolific.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking over 25 books he wrote,
No.
including titles like The Wisdom of Insecurity and The Way of Zen.
Wow.
Those alone probably give you a taste of, what we're dealing with here.
Just those titles, they make you think, don't they? Okay, so let's get to the good stuff here. What were Watts' fundamental beliefs, about happiness?
Well, Watts had a radically different view, than what we're often told today. Um, it wasn't about getting external validation, collecting things, or, achieving some distant goal. He believed that happiness wasn't about the destination, but about the journey itself.
It's so interesting because, so much of what we hear is all about set those goals, strive for that success, get all the things, and then you'll be happy, right?
Right.
So Watts is saying it's not about any of that.
Exactly. He saw true happiness as this thing that kind of naturally comes up, when we align ourselves with the present moment. And he believed that we actually create our own suffering by, clinging to this illusion of control.
It's funny, right? Those ideas of being present and letting go of control, you hear them everywhere now. But Watts was talking about this stuff decades ago. I think it's fascinating how our modern anxieties actually prove his point. We're so focused on the future, always planning and worrying, trying to control every little thing that we forget about, the joy that's available right now.
He was definitely ahead of his time.
Yeah.
One of his main ideas was that happiness isn't something you achieve in the future, it's something you experience right now. He argued that, we miss out on so much joy dwelling on past regrets or worrying about the future.
It's that I'll be happy when trap.
Exactly. Watts would encourage us to really savor those simple pleasures of the present moment, enjoying, a cup of coffee, a good conversation, the feeling of the sun. These are the moments that actually make up a life.
Yeah. It really makes you realize how much we take for granted. I think, though, where people often get stuck is how do you actually do that? It's one thing to say be present, but our world is designed to distract us.
That's where the idea of letting go of control really comes in. And it's a tough one for many of us. We're conditioned to believe that we need to be in control, to strive and achieve, to make things happen.
Oh, I know all about that. If my to-do list isn't color-coded and prioritized, I feel like my world is falling apart.
Yeah, you and everyone else. But Watts would say that by fighting against life's natural flow, we actually create more suffering for ourselves. He often used the analogy of rowing a boat upstream. You can exhaust yourself fighting that current, or you can, relax, let the river carry you, enjoy the scenery along the way.
Okay, that analogy really clicks for me. It's you can still have goals and aspirations, right? But it's more about the approach, isn't it? It's not about white-knuckling your way through life, but trusting the process, even enjoying the ride.
Exactly. Now, another crucial part of Watts' philosophy, and this one might seem a little out there at first, the idea that the separate self is an illusion.
Oh, this is where I always get tripped up. What did he actually mean by that? And what does it have to do with
Oh,
happiness?
it's a profound idea.
Yeah.
He was saying that we tend to, view ourselves as these isolated individuals,
Mm-hmm.
separate from everything and everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And this feeling of separation, he argued, is a root cause of so much unhappiness. It leads to loneliness, insecurity, that constant need for external validation. We're all these little islands trying to prove ourselves to each other.
Oh, yeah. It's no wonder we feel so disconnected, right? Even though we're constantly being bombarded with ways to connect.
Exactly. Watts believed that this sense of separation is like a fundamental misunderstanding of reality.
Okay.
Eastern philosophies like Zen Buddhism, they emphasize that everything is interconnected. We're
Yeah.
not separate entities, but part of this larger web of life.
So just imagine if you could really feel that, that you're not alone in your struggles and your joys, that we're all part of something much bigger. It's almost like a sense of belonging, of being held by something larger than yourself, right?
Yes, and that sense of interconnectedness, that feeling of belonging, is where lasting peace and happiness can be found.
Okay, so we've talked about being present, letting go of control, and this idea that our sense of self is actually an illusion. That's a lot to take in.
It is.
But what I'm really curious about is how do we actually apply this stuff to our lives?
Right, that's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Watts actually offered some really practical techniques for cultivating happiness,
Okay.
and they might surprise you with how simple they are.
Okay, I'm ready. Give me the happiness toolkit.
All right. One of the foundational practices that Watts really emphasized was mindfulness.
Oh,
Okay, and you hear that word everywhere these days. But for Watts, it wasn't just like a meditation trend. It was a way of life.
so it's more than just sitting on a cushion and chanting
Exactly. He was
Yeah.
talking about cultivating this, heightened awareness of the present moment,
Mm-hmm.
really paying attention to your thoughts, your feelings, your sensations without, judging them. It's about quieting that inner critic that's always telling you you're not enough or you should be doing more.
That inner critic, it's like a constant companion, isn't it? Always second guessing, worrying, planning. It's exhausting.
It is, and it steals your joy.
Mm.
Mindfulness helps you create that space between your thoughts and your reactions. It's like hitting the pause button so you can respond to life with more, clarity and wisdom.
So how do you actually practice mindfulness? Because it still feels a little bit abstract to me.
It can be as simple as just focusing on your senses. Just throughout the day, stop and notice what you see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. Really immerse yourself in the experience of the present moment.
So you're saying if I'm eating lunch, instead of, scrolling on my phone, I should actually taste the food.
Exactly. Or if you're walking outside, notice the warmth of the sun on your skin, the sounds of the birds, the scent of flowers, those everyday moments. That's where life's actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
But we so often miss it.
It's so true. Our minds are always somewhere else. I'm definitely going to try to be more present. Okay, so mindfulness is one tool. What else did Watts suggest?
Well, another big one is acceptance, which, kind of goes hand in hand with letting go of control.
Oh, acceptance. That's a tough one. And I bet I'm not alone in that. How do you learn to, accept things you don't like? Or situations you can't control? I feel like we're wired to just, fight against discomfort.
It's definitely not easy. Watts believed that so much of our suffering actually comes from this resistance.
Mm.
We think if we can just control every outcome, then we'll finally be happy. But that just sets us up for disappointment.
Yeah.
He encouraged us to kind of practice surrendering to life, to accept what is, rather than, clinging to how we think things should be.
I get it, but it's one of those things that's easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
Any practical tips for actually putting acceptance into practice?
Well, one technique that Watts suggested was to simply notice your resistance. When you feel yourself, getting tense or angry or anxious, just acknowledge those feelings without judgment. Say to yourself, okay, I'm noticing that I'm feeling resistant to this. And often just bringing awareness to that resistance can help loosen its grip.
It's like you're acknowledging the emotion, but you're not letting it run the show.
Exactly. Another practice that can be helpful is reframing your perspective. So instead of viewing those challenges as obstacles, try to see them as opportunities for growth and learning.
Finding that silver lining, even in the tough stuff.
Right. And remember, acceptance isn't about, being passive or giving up. It's about engaging with life from a place of peace and openness, rather than fighting against it.
Okay, that's a really helpful distinction. So we've got mindfulness, we've got acceptance. What other practices did Watts recommend?
This one might surprise you. Watts believed that we should view life as a game.
A game. Seriously. Life can feel like anything but a game sometimes.
I know, right? But that's exactly his point.
Okay.
He felt that taking ourselves and our goals too seriously creates all this unnecessary pressure and stress.
Right.
He encouraged us to have a lighter approach, to face life with a sense of curiosity and playfulness.
So, like, we're all just playing in this grand cosmic playground.
Exactly. Think about it. When you're playing a game, you're fully present, engaged in that moment.
Mm,
You're not worried about winning or losing. You're just enjoying the experience.
yeah. Takes the pressure off the outcome.
Right.
Allows you to appreciate the journey.
Exactly.
I love that. Okay, what else is in this happiness toolkit?
Well, another one, and this one, probably no surprise, spending time in nature.
Ah, nature. There's something so grounding and peaceful about being outdoors. Why did Watts think that was so crucial for happiness?
Well, he believed that being in nature helps us tap into a sense of awe and wonder, reminding us of our place in the grand scheme of things.
Mm.
It allows us to connect with something larger than ourselves and tap into this wellspring of wisdom and inspiration.
Nature has a way of putting things in perspective, doesn't it?
Yep.
It's like your problems suddenly seem a lot smaller when you're looking up at a sky full of stars or you're listening to waves crashing on the shore.
It's true. It reminds you that you're part of something much bigger and more magnificent than yourself. And it helps you see that interconnectedness of everything, how every living thing plays a role in that larger ecosystem.
Okay, so we've got mindfulness, acceptance, viewing life as a game, connecting with nature. That's quite a toolkit. Are there any other practices that Watts recommended?
Yes, there's one more that I want to touch on. It's a practice that Watts himself struggled with, but ultimately he believed it was essential for happiness.
Ooh, this is intriguing. Tell me more.
Gratitude.
Gratitude. That seems pretty straightforward. Why was it so difficult for Watts?
Oh, because Watts had such a deep understanding of impermanence. He knew that everything is constantly changing, that nothing lasts forever. And while this brought him a lot of peace, it also made it hard for him to get attached, even to the good things.
So he had trouble appreciating the present moment because he was so aware of how fleeting it was.
Exactly. But he came to realize that gratitude is crucial because it allows us to fully savor those good things while we have them.
Mm-hmm.
It's about recognizing the abundance that surrounds us, even in the midst of difficulty.
That's a beautiful perspective, finding that balance between, acceptance of impermanence, but also appreciating the beauty of each moment while it lasts.
Exactly. And Watts believed that practicing gratitude can actually increase our happiness. It shifts our focus from what we lack to what we already have. It trains our minds to see the good, even in the midst of the bad.
Okay, so we've got this amazing toolkit for cultivating happiness, mindfulness, acceptance, viewing life as a game, connecting with nature, gratitude. And what strikes me is that these aren't like rigid rules or anything. It's more like principles that you can kind of weave into your life in a way that feels authentic to you.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. It's about finding what works for you and creating a life that aligns with those principles.
Now, I know some of Watt's ideas, they can seem pretty radical, almost out there for, our modern world.
Yep.
But I'm curious, why do you think his teachings are still so relevant today? Maybe even more so than when he was alive.
Yeah, it's like he was looking into the future, right? He was talking about these things decades ago, and now they're like major struggles for us.
He really did, tap into something fundamental about being human. And I think, his teachings, they offer this fresh perspective and maybe even like a way forward, amidst all the challenges that our world is facing right now.
Totally. Okay, I'm ready to hear how this all connects to our modern lives.
Mm.
Like, for example, we were talking about control earlier, and it feels like our society is just obsessed with it. How does Watts' philosophy address that?
Well, Watts believed that this obsession with control, it really comes from this deep-seated fear of the unknown.
Why?
We try to control everything, our careers, our relationships, even our free time, just because we crave that sense of security.
Oh, yeah. The irony is that the more we try to control things, the more anxious we become.
Yeah.
I'm definitely guilty of that. Like, I need to have all my ducks in a row, and when something unexpected happens, it throws me completely off. It's a common trap.
Mm.
But Watts would say that, life is inherently unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
And by resisting that truth, we just create more suffering for ourselves.
Mm.
He encourages us to, embrace the unknown, let go of that illusion of control, and trust that life will unfold as it should.
It's like that saying, we plan, God laughs, right? It's a reminder that we're not really in the driver's seat, no matter how much we might try to convince ourselves otherwise.
Exactly. And then, there's that whole success equals happiness trap that we talked about.
Yeah.
It's everywhere you look today. You need to hustle, achieve, acquire, and then you'll be happy.
And of course, there's always something else to achieve, another goalpost to reach. It's just a never-ending cycle.
Right. And Watts saw that as a major source of unhappiness in the modern world. You know,
Hmm.
he felt that tying your happiness to those external markers like wealth or status would always leave you feeling incomplete.
Yeah.
And he encouraged us to kind of redefine success altogether.
So instead of focusing on those external markers, what did he suggest we focus on?
He was all about living a meaningful and fulfilling life,
Hmm.
you know, one that's in alignment with your values. It's about finding joy in the process itself, not just the outcome.
So it's about shifting your focus from what you lack to what you already have.
Exactly.
It's a subtle but powerful shift in perspective.
Exactly. Watts believed that true happiness is this inner state of being, not something that depends on those external circumstances.
Hmm.
He encouraged us to cultivate inner peace and contentment, regardless of what we accomplish in the world.
It makes you wonder how much of our unhappiness comes from chasing the wrong things, you know?
Definitely something to consider. And I think it speaks to another issue we're grappling with today, loneliness and isolation.
Right.
It's ironic that we're more connected than ever through technology,
Yeah.
yet so many people feel deeply alone.
It's like all those social media connections are a mile wide but an inch deep.
Yeah, Watts addressed this directly with his concept of the interconnectedness of all things.
Right.
He believed that our feelings of separation and isolation, they're actually an illusion, a product of our ego-driven minds.
So what's the antidote to that?
Well, Watts believed that by cultivating a sense of unity with the world around us,
Yeah.
with nature, with other people, even with our own experiences, we can actually break free from that illusion of separation and experience a sense of belonging.
It's about recognizing that we're all a part of something much larger than ourselves, not just on an intellectual level, but like on a deeply felt level.
Exactly. And finally, I think Watts' teachings offer a really valuable perspective on, the growing interest in mindfulness and nature connection.
Yeah.
He saw mindfulness as a way to cultivate present moment awareness, and break free from that tyranny of our thoughts. And he was a huge advocate for spending time in nature to nourish our well-being.
He was way ahead of the curve on that one. It feels like we're just starting to catch up to what he was talking about decades ago.
Yeah, it's a rediscovery of that ancient wisdom. And Watt's teachings offer this beautiful bridge between those traditions and the challenges we face in the 21st century.
Wow. This deep dive into Alan Watts has been truly eye-opening. I feel like I have a whole new set of tools for navigating the complexities of modern life.
It's been my pleasure.
I'd like to leave our listeners with a question to ponder. If you truly believed you were a part of something larger, something interconnected and magnificent, how would that change the way you look at your life? Think about that. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of Alan Watts and his ideas. Until next time, keep diving deep.